and it's about 7:05, so we'll start now. And I'm the president of HAL5. And tonight's speaker is Gregory Allison, who is actually the former president of HAL5 and also founded HAL5 back in 1983, was it?
Yes, 1983. It's been 23 years as president of HAL5, off and on.
Cool. I've been part of HAL5 since 2012, and I've been the president of HAL5 since about the past, this is my first year, so about the past 6 months or so. And anyway, tonight's talk will be on Greg, sort of your own research, your own personal research on a universal habitat for Mars and Earth.
Correct. I have been working up a concept for a habitat that you can live in, make a living out of. I call it universal habitat because you can put them any place, Earth, space. You just make a few modifications to tailor it for where you want it to go. But it's a living concept. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to a Mars simulation of that habitat. So let me hit share. And what you're going to see right now is we're on the outside of Mars, of the habitat of Mars, and I'm Superman, so I don't need a spacesuit right now, although I can put one on. So I'm going to do the Superman flying thing. And this is a sim world here. This is, yes, the habitat's got an entrance to it. The habitat's under the dome. There is a mining complex out here. Some of the things don't show up unless you're close down to them. Hang on with me. So let me go a little further out. Hang on. Flying legs are getting a little. There we are. There's the miners, mining equipment. Go down. See that? Things kind of appear when you're close to it. Yeah, my flying legs are a little rusty here. Give me a. Let's go around outside here just a little bit, just kind of give you a once around here. Yeah, hang on. That's the mining equipment. And that stuff actually will simulate and run. And there's a mine over here that runs. It's got belts and things like that on it. There's a process here for extracting carbon dioxide and making water and all kinds of things. So there's a lot of entrances, and you can walk into this habitat. We had it set up for Yuri's night. You can see there's a SpaceX Starship here in the distance. And that habitat, those blue things on the top, that's pools of water in containers to give you a radiation shield from above. These panels here are combination reflective panels and solar photovoltaic cells. And this is kind of, because this is closer to polar region, so it's aimed toward the sun. So let's go inside. Rather than walk inside, I'm going to take a shortcut. How's that? You didn't know the Worm Man could do Star Trek teleporting, did you? Okay, welcome to my world. And you can see in the title up here, it's Greg's Habitat, Greg's Universal Habitat, no doubt. And this is about 30 meters in diameter. These cushions are because we had a big party here for Yuri's night. And on Yuri's night, we had a screen here, and I actually projected straight onto the screen the presentation I'm going to show you in PowerPoint. But I'd probably need a little assistance from another guy to set that up, and he's not available right now. But what you can see, that greenery on the wall, if I'm not spinning too fast, is intended to be a wall to grow things. You can see we got a little cabbage or lettuce growing here. That's supposed to be tomato bushes. There's a little spiral staircase there you can go up. We can walk around. Whoops, I'm still flying. Hang on, let me get down on the ground. Now, the thing about this, in this sim, is the point of view is a little bit behind the avatar. Oh, by the way, you can see the avatar, except for the hair being a little short, it's kind of like me with a haircut. See, I got a gray beard, just like I do in life. Hair's a little short, too. The avatar's got to grow some hair, right? So we've got quarters in here. There's a kitchen set up. Living room. There's This habitat actually could probably accommodate about 40 or 50 people. There's some bunks in here, a bedroom. There's a little bit more sophisticated bedroom on around here. I will show you the habitat concept in PowerPoint in a little bit, but it's just kind of fun. I thought it might be more interesting to show you what we've got here. Now look, some people just can't make up their beds, even on Mars. What about that? Sloppy, messy crew members. So looks lived in, right? So we've got a pool here. This pool, if you look, actually has fish swimming around in here. You see these fish? That's salmon. That's intended, or it could be a freshwater fish. Actually, it should be a freshwater fish because we want to run aquaponics in here to help water the system. Aquaponics is a system where you use the waste from fish to feed plants. But rather than walk up the stairs, I'm going to fly. Don't bump my head on these pools of water above. The water is intended to provide radiation shielding from above. It's probably not the optimal way to depict that. You can see this is a multi-level place here. We'll go, there's 3 levels inside. And those are pineapples growing below me right there. There's also a space museum in the simulation. I'm probably not all that depth immediately to get into it. So, and there we are. There's my world on Mars. How many people, oops, sometimes this thing's a little, yeah. If I get down, I can actually walk on it instead of flying around. And this is actually ground level. Most of this is below ground. I mean, I could actually walk through those tunnels I was showing you a little bit ago that I missed by flying out, right? The thing is, he's covered the hole here. So I could walk in or out of this place. I said I'm going to go back around and come back the way I came. Oh, looks like we got a force field here. Let me go back. Fix that later. So again, this habitat is mostly underground in this case on Mars. You see the fish in there. It's even on, if it wasn't, the walls are intended to be thick to incorporate a lot of thermal mass. It's going to use a lot of passive solar. The mirrors overhead will reflect light down into it. You can see Yuri's space capsule is Vostok there. Like I said, we had a Yuri's night celebration in here. And we're on the second level where the pineapples are. The lady that depicted all that's actually from Brazil. The guy that set all this up is Mike Laurie. Mike's not with us right now. I should have gave him an earlier notice, and I just didn't do it. He probably could have joined us and explained a lot of what he did and how he fleshed this out. But he basically took my concept from the PowerPoint presentation and scaled it up a little bit for this Mars habitat. Let me go a little bit here. Now you can having multiple glass panes would be an advantage on Mars or anywhere in space. I would actually advocate having those subdivided in case you get a meteoroid puncher one. What's interesting about this is I can actually fly outside, I think. I don't think he's got the, sometimes he fixes it where you can't go through the glass and sometimes I can't. Oops, yeah. He's got it fixed where I can't get through. I don't think. Yeah. Sometimes what's solid and what's not alters in the simulation. So it's kind of interesting. There we are. I can actually walk around the ladder. So this is intended to be a multi-tier facility. Now, let's see if the ladder is solid. Sometimes you fall through these. Okay, it's solid. I can walk on it without falling through. Whoop. Well, that wasn't solid. There's still some holes in the simulation, if you will, but that's part of the simulation. In any event, So let me go back up so we can get back on the top again. Yeah, lines are a little interesting. Ouch. How many people do we have in here now, David? You're muted, David. Okay, I can't hear you. All right, that's good.
Yeah. Sorry, let me check. So far we got 13 attendees.
Okay.
And 2 of us, so 15 altogether.
All right, so once again, this is, whoops, I just fell through the other level. This is inside my habitat. I'll go down on the platform down here where the band's at, in the middle of the drum set. Not a good place to see. But if you can fly like Superman, you can walk on water too. That's kind of neat. Anyway, so much fun for that. This is a Mars rendition of the habitat. Now, what I would like to find is people that can take this concept and actually put it in artwork. This is a start, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop this share, and we're going to go and I'm going to share my PowerPoint file to show you what this thing would look like on Earth. It's up here, and we're going to go full screen with this. Oh, yeah, I do have a spacesuit I can don in this simulation. That's me standing out there. Now, this is the actual depiction that Mike Orr used to flesh out that system. He made that 3 levels, and that's okay. This whole thing is scaled to the scale of a farm run by the DeVace family in Pasadena, California. The DeVace family started out as a family of 4 adults, the father, son, and 2 adult daughters. And on 1/10 of an acre in their backyard, they grew all the food they ate except for grain products, and they actually sold off the excess of that 1/10 of an acre. Yeah, you hear me right. And made a living from it. They made a living and ate from 1/10 of an acre. Now, to do that, you know, you do a lot of vertical growing, and it's kind of intensive, and they did do a lot of work. They worked it pretty extensively, but they proved what they could actually do. Now, they did not live fancy. They lived meager lives, but they were very happy, self-adjusted people. They weren't part of the rat race because they were living off their place. But their garden was in the back of the house, and they had a driveway and a house, and a lot of other things occupying their lot, front yard. Their lot was actually 1/5 of an acre. So I thought, well, what if you can make all this more efficient and grow on the roof and consolidate the space? And I had a vision for something like that, kind of a hyper Earthship type house. And I'll show some pictures of what an Earthship is in the back of this presentation and what that can be. But I think I'm a little off on the scale. I think these walls are actually scaled at 1 foot thick, and it should be 2 foot thick on the outer walls. It's okay if these are 1 foot thick, but you know, get maximum radiation protection. So this house was, the concept was for it to provide radiation protection, to be largely fireproof. It would probably be very resilient from earthquakes, especially if you built the walls out of sandbags, like sandbag houses are built. Probably should put some pictures in here of that. So this is a cross section of a hexagon, looking across an arrow. So it's actually longer going in and out of the page. That said, you know, an acre is this. So this would be 1/10 of an acre, which would be 4,356 feet. So half that, I divided this thing in half. So over half this area here would be over 2,000 square foot per level. Now, 2,000 square foot, it's a decent sized home for, say, a family of 4. But so I've got this actually divided in 2 levels here. It don't have to be this way. There's a lot of flexibility with what you do. But the idea was you'd have a living area and a workshop area in addition to your growing area. And this workshop area, again, is a 1/20 of an acre. It's got plenty of space, over 2,000 square foot, that you could make this your garage. You could have entrance to come in and there, but that's bigger, far bigger than you need for a garage. You could make it a workshop. You could put a server farm in there to do internet stuff. You could put pottery wheels. You could put you can grow microgreens down here as long as you've got some power. And I do have videos on my Green Greg's channel. I do have a YouTube channel that shows you how to grow microgreens in your living room, because that's what I was doing for a while. You can have a store in here, a bar, you know, you can put 3D printers, you can put lathes in here. And I think, you know, for the kind of vision, the kind of society I like to see set up, the idea of having 3D printers and distributed manufacturing would be the way to go, because I'll give you kind of speak of what my general long-term vision is here, why you don't need a lot of infrastructure. And that would actually make it very ideal for space systems if you don't need a lot of infrastructure. I'll go more into that in a moment. But so you've got 1/10 of an acre on top of the living quarters and down in here too. I did show a low sun angle, so I thought, you know, part of the living quarters over the top, you might have the walkways could be skylights with a grate, metal grate that you'd walk on, and you're growing between the walkways. And that could be raised higher as a raised bed. I've got this about 4 foot high, I believe, right here, going around a little side area. I've got areas for rainwater collection. That's a huge rainwater collection area, a lot bigger than they use for the earthship houses out in the desert southwest in Taos, where those things are popular. But I've also got us growing on the walls, doing vertical growing down here. You could put vertical growing in here too if you so chose. I've depicted plants growing on the floor down here. I'm depicting having an aquaponics system, some rabbits and worms and maybe some mushroom logs over here stacked up on the side where you've got less sunlight. You see I've got a little pump here, and it goes down to the fish tank and comes up, and I've got cubes running across here spaced out. You know, you can still get enough light down here, but you could have some things going at this level too. Now on this side, I've got a solar panel. This was the idea is you're heating the water for the restrooms, the bathroom, the kitchen, so you'd have a solar heated hot water. This house is going to have so much solar thermal mass, it's going to be pretty close to the temperature of the deep earth. The sun with the greenhouse over would really heat it up in here. To control temperature, you would open this up in places on Earth and vent it. Now on Mars, you would recirculate air through the terrain, or whatever you call it on Mars, a Martian regolith or lunar regolith if you're on the moon. Now what an Earthship house does, and I'll show you in a moment, they run tubes through the ground and have open ports. They open them up, and when they vent it, it pulls cool air into the house. You could do that here. Or you could recirculate it, as I mentioned, especially if you're on Mars or the moon. So the idea here is most of our energy in a home goes to heating and cooling and into hot water, heating hot water. Where you're going to take care of that with thermal mass from the ground, thermal mass in the walls. Then you got to build this thing completely above ground. If you make the walls thick enough, which you could do with sandbags, or you can pound in with tires like they do on Earthships, which is not necessary. You can 3D print this whole thing if you so chose to save labor. Labor, you can build this stuff from material on the site where you're building, except for sandbags or whatever binders you're using or things to hold the material and frame it. And you could come up with some of the framing, you know, local resources. You know, there's metals on Mars and the moon. On the moon, you could spin fiberglass from the silicate in the rocks. We know that they have a lot of silicate in them, silicon. And you could do the same thing on Mars. So you could make fiberglass structures, struts. You can make metal struts if you so chose for your framing for the facility itself, whatever you want to do in that manner. You can also make fiberglass sandbags if you want to build it bag-wise. And then again, you can make Lunarcrete, Marscrete. Hopefully Mars has more volatiles on it, so hopefully you can derive the material. Well, the moon does too now. We're finding water on the moon. You might import chemicals from Earth to use as binders if you choose to build this thing on Mars. And we'll go more into that in a moment. And I still have the simulation up, and we'll go back into it because some people will join late. The greenhouse, I penciled this in because this could be hoops. It could be built in any geometry you want to do. It could be a dome. I was purposely not trying to be too specific on what the geometry of a greenhouse would be. I'm showing an active vent here. It's not necessary to use an active vent. The Earthship houses don't use active vents, by the way. They're all passive. So you don't need an electric fan up there, but you could use one. On the moon or Mars, you probably will want some kind of power that's going to run your ventilation system. Even if you are using the regolith, deep down is a thermal stabilizer, and you really need it, especially on the moon where the temperatures vary so widely. So one of the purposes of having a home like this, typically what you see on the moon and Mars is something totally closed over the top where you're living at. No light coming in. But then they'll show little inflatable greenhouses outside. Well, if you're on the Mars or the moon, any inflatable greenhouse is going to be destroyed almost instantly, especially on Mars by sandstorms, by the temperature variations. The temperatures are just too hot or too cold, micrometeoroids, they're not going to, ultraviolet will destroy the plastics. They're just not going to last if you're building the kind I've seen depicted in a lot of artwork. In fact, you need a lot of thermal mass. Actually, the one in the Martian was pretty good because they built it inside of a spent rocket stage or some other structure. And I thought they did a really good job there for his potato garden. That was the best depiction I've seen in some time for how to do a garden in space. So you can use human waste. You can have a worm farm maybe down in here to help recycle some of that stuff and the waste from the food products you have. You could use aquaponics to get things started because you can grow in tubes, and you can use the rock from the regolith. On Mars, you'd have to get the, you got contaminants in the rock. You've got hydrogen peroxide. You got chlorines, perchlorate, I believe, in Martian regolith. You got to get the perchlorate out. I'm having a hard time speaking today. So now, how deep this is in the ground is totally up to you and the geology you're living on, how well things drain. You don't want anything below water level, really, unless you really build it super watertight. I wouldn't advise that. So you want something that drains out. This could be entirely above ground and just have really thick walls, and you could pile earth or regolith up against the sides to give you extra thermal mass for extra stability. On Earth, this would be very resilient to storms. If you lived in an area and then the grid went down and nuclear power plants cooked off and imbuing everything with radiation, if you had a little water tube on top, you could wash the radioactive fallout off the roof, and you could be growing plants inside that would be pretty safe. You could have a thick roof overhead that would give you some shielding. If you need extra shielding, you can go down to a lower level. So this actually is a house that you could survive probably as long as you don't take a direct hit in a nuclear war. Power plants cooking off, but still you got to make some excursions outside from time to time to acquire materials. So you'll have some problems if we're living in a post grid down with a nuclear power plant, spent fuel rod pools cooking off. So this is once again, I got the solar panels up here on this wall, which are out of your reach for where you could reach growing plants. That's a little higher up. So this says berm here. That's a notional optional ground level. So I drew this up a little over a year ago, made this drawing. Again, this is the Earth version. This, again, that's kind of from my Mars. We looked at that a minute ago, my sim. And that was in the sim. Let's see, here we go. This is kind of a notional idea of it on Mars or the moon. I drew it red, that's supposed to be Mars. I got some foundational footings in here. And I'm showing the lower shop, the upper shop, and a thick layer of water overhead. Now that may be contained in separable jugs suspended from a ceiling. What a lot of people don't realize, if you put a dome ceiling in space, it's going to have a lot of pressure. Even at 14.7 psi, you're going to have millions of pounds of thrust trying to pop that top off that dome off your habitat. You need something to hold it down. And so suspending water jugs might be just do the trick. You might have them separate enough so they won't collide with each other. You could make them out of glass if you do that. Glass will help block some of the UV, by the way, as will the water. So you're a little bit better shielded from UV below that. And it will also absorb a lot of radiation. Water is a good radiation absorber. Now, I haven't done the studies to figure out how much water you need. It may depend on a little bit of where you're on the moon or Mars. But you can definitely hang a lot of jugs from the ceiling. And, well, if you need so much water that gets to be a problem with the weight of the ceiling, you could reinforce it from beneath. Or you might have a solid tank, but I think having many different tanks would be better in case you have a micrometeoroid problem or something like that. Now, if a micrometeoroid does make it through your ceiling, probably the water will absorb it because you can shoot bullets in the water and the water will stop them really fast. So that will really be helpful. But then again, that's probably another reason to have multiple jugs. So you could actually look up and have light from above coming down into your habitat, real, true, natural light, except for when it's dark on the moon. Then you'd have to augment this with lights hanging down below here. And even on Mars, you might augment it with additional lighting. And you might want to have some kind of nuclear power source or something else, especially for the moon with a 14-day long nights. It's 14 Earth days, right? So now what we were looking at before was coming in from one side of this, like over here looking this way when I had it drawn out. This is a floor plan for a hexagonal system where it's open on this side. You can have your solar panels down here for electricity. You won't need a lot of electricity, really, if you're living in a home like this. In fact, you'll be collecting on Earth, you'll be collecting rainwater. In space, you're recycling your water. You will recycle it to a large degree. The Earthships take it through a 4-step process, and they collect the water off the back of their house. A much smaller area than I'm depicting here. They don't totally recycle it. We could step it up to a notch or two, I think, easily. And they don't use compost and toilets typically. That would save a lot of water and help you recycle your solid waste, I think, even better. So there's a lot that can be done with recycling, to optimize recycling more than what they do in an Earthship, even with homes on ground. Now, so you won't need distributed systems. You won't need city water. You won't need power coming in from outside. You're off the grid. So your house isn't going to get fried by solar coronal mass ejection, putting a jolt of electricity into your house. You'll be better off from EMP and all these things. And if you're making a living out of your house, because you have your businesses downstairs, you're growing food and selling from it, you're teleworking, you've got distributed manufacturing with 3D printers. Suddenly office space is going to become a thing of the past. There'll still be factories, but maybe not as much if we do more distributed manufacturing with 3D printers, and you can take them and put them in everybody's house, or have local 3D printer groups and facilities. We have more distributed manufacturing for most things. I mean, you'll still be dealing fiber optics and electronics, chips and things like that. We'll still need labs where they make the chips and the factories for that kind of stuff. Rockets are still going to take a big factory. You're not going to need much in the way of personal transportation, because you're not going to need to be going to work every day. So there'll be a lot less demand on roads and highways, power lines, pipelines, fuel systems. Suddenly you dramatically reduce the environmental footprint on Earth. And on space, it means you don't have to install all that stuff. You can live without installing all these massive distributed systems, which makes developing a space habitat, space colony, much easier. And you can bunch these things together. There's a square rectangular version of it. Again, this is the open courtyard that you'd be growing food in. This is the living area. You got a shop area the same size beneath this, and over the top of this, you've got a growing area. And I've got, look at this. I've got a study here. I got a big walk-in closet. I got a master bath, which is huge. A master bedroom, a bathroom off this bedroom here, which is close to this one. A hallway, a living room, dining room, kitchen area there. Again, this is over 2,000 square foot on that level alone. So, and you're growing on the roof. You got a shop below it. You got a lot of space here for doing a lot of things. Here's the idea where you can take a bunch of these hexagons and just put them together. You can build a complex with these. And you might even have the center open. I looked at different ways of sharing resources between cells here. Hey, this guy might have, each one might get a section, a little piece of the open courtyard between them even to share, or it could just be an open common. So there's many things in many ways. This is a very versatile concept. You can do this with rectangular habitats as well. Also, if you're on Earth, you can make the walls of those rectangular habitats from ISO shipping containers and then pile dirt up against them, or sandbags or whatever, because you do want the thermal mass. But there's many, many, many ways to implement this basic concept. The cool thing about this is, see, I even looked at the idea of, I looked at some of your normal cargo ships, and I looked, well, what if I put holes, put a platform across the hulls of 3 of your typical cargo ships that's 1,200 foot long, and I figured, hey, I could put 330 homes on this thing, 330 families. So, that's like over 1,200 people living on a floating raft out in the ocean. But you don't all have to live on the ocean. People say we're overcrowded on Earth. The problem on Earth is we have too many people. You could take your environmental impact on Earth, your environmental footprint, almost zero with habitats like this. And check this out. Make them at 1/10 of an acre. If you look at, you have 4,356 feet per habitat, or you can break it down. That was for 4 people. That's over 1,000 square foot per person of surface area looking straight down. But you're going to have multiple layers on that. So I figured out, the UN was saying at one point toward the end of the century, they expected the human population to reach 9 billion people. They revised that upward a little bit, but not much. And then they think the population will start to drop, just like it's doing so in the West right now. They think that's going to happen globally. Now, you can build habitats like this anywhere in the world. You can build them cheaply if the labor is cheap. and you could have people living a nice, comfortable lifestyle. And I mean, you know, a lifestyle may be better than what we're living today everywhere in the world. Poverty is not necessary. Poverty is not required. Poverty is imposed upon us. We can break poverty. Poverty is a poverty of consciousness. Once we get out of that, and people will work together in communities, you can build these habitats, just like people used to raise barns, you know, in a community. But the good news about this, to house 9 billion people, if you wanted to pack all of them in one place, and I would never advocate that. And look, you're growing your food out of this, you're living out of it. So this is actually sustaining your energy needs, your food needs, and everything for the most part, with maybe a little exception. You'll still want to have some open farms for some things. You still want, you know, hey, I still want to eat beef if I'm on Earth, that is. Hey, rabbits are easy to grow in space, or you know, goats might be a possibility, but rabbits definitely. Fish, absolutely. And I did show aquaponics in the Martian habitat. Now, if you took 9 billion people and figured that if each one needed 1,089 square foot, how much area would they need to house all the population of Earth if you did put them in one area? Which I'd say never do, because you don't want all your eggs in a basket. Everybody's not going to get along with each other. And it's good to have diversity and people spread out. But if you did put it all together, the area required for everyone would be equal to Texas and New Mexico. That's all you need, Texas and New Mexico. The rest of the Earth would be vacant if you want to do it that way. Or just half of Alaska. How about that for percent? On an area the size of half of Alaska, you could accommodate the population of Earth and almost everything they need. Yeah, you might still have a few little farms here and there. We're not going to put farms out of business. There'll still be factories. There'll still be ports. There'll still be highways. There'll still be parks. But we could dramatically reduce our input on Earth. You don't need all the office space. You're not going to need all the stores and shops. Social distancing would be built in if you needed it for a pandemic. But, you know, hey, you could also get together. So there's nothing stopping people from getting together. You still have schools and shops and bars and, you know, other things if there's not something to prohibit us from doing those kind of things. So I'm going to show you some other pictures and here's some of the math I used to work out the angles on this habitat and the lengths of the pieces. So this is a place I've got behind my house where I've got poles. And I call it Woodhenge. I'm really, I think I'm going to go in here and build a version of this right here, a rectangular version, and using this hole. That's my plan. Oh, yeah, this was, I did a video. This is from an Earthship. I think that not only should these things will be very utilitarian, but they should be beautiful, just like they build Earthships. They build Earthships principally out of garbage and concrete. You can see that here's got a lot of recycled bottles and cans going in the walls. And you can use colored glass bottles, wine bottles. You can make it pretty. But the beautiful thing is they're growing plants in here. You need greenery because greenery actually helps reset some of the hormones in your body. I mean, it gives you a better sense of mind. There's something called a nature bath. If you're in nature, you're a lot more calm. And people in the cities are far from being calm. People in the cities need more greenery. We need to rebuild what a city is. We need to redefine what a city is, or a rural area or country. Now, see, I'd prefer to have one of these way out in the middle of nowhere on a farm, actual bigger farm. I blocked the image out of somebody in here. But look, inside you're growing stuff. It could be beautiful, green. Now, the guys who did the Mars sim, you know, they didn't quite go to this level with the simulation of plants because there were limitations on memory and, you know, just building time. It might be more like this in the future. This is what I could use an artist to help me out with, is drawing pictures of what a habitat like that could look like inside. Now, this is inside an Earthship. You can see some colored glass in there. This is looking from one level inside to the greenhouse part of it. They all have greenhouses, but that's all the growing area they typically have in an Earthship, and which is not a lot. But they look at it, they're growing bananas on this. Is, you know, probably some really cold area. And they got these pull cords. All they use to open the vents in the ceiling. They let the air out. And here's one of the tubes that goes through the ground that they pull the cooler air through, because this goes through the ground. It cools off going through this tube, and it's like air conditioning coming into the house. And they got the grate there, the screen, to keep varmints from coming in. And there's what one of those ports look like. And then they can just close it off when they want that cooler air coming in. Or they can also close off the louvers that let the hot air out of the greenhouse. And here's another bottle wall. There's a bottle wall. I've seen some of these are really beautiful. I love it when they use different color bottles, wine bottles. Of course, you can color glass. Now, some people get kind of funky with the artwork, but you can do that. I do believe that each of these homes should be beautiful. The whole vision is having a home that you can live out of, make a living out of, You're paying almost nothing in utilities. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go. Of course, you can still go places, but you won't have to have the requirements of transportation that we have in today's society. You won't require automobiles and all the things that we have. You might lease them. There might be some other thing. Oh, you might have a car. You might have a bunch of cars. I don't care, but you won't need it. And so there won't be the demand. Everybody's not running to work every morning. You won't have the demands on highways and roads. You may not need as many traffic cops. I'm not saying defund police. That's not my game. But I'm going to say you won't need as much structure. You won't need as much from the government. If you can grow your own food, neighbors could take care of themselves in a situation like this. I mean, your communities could take care of almost all your social needs just within whatever groups you're in. So that's the beauty of this concept. It would be the whole idea is the home should be so attractive from the standpoint of low cost to maintain, resilience, being able to withstand storms, radiation, and stuff that our stick-built houses can't possibly take. And it could be built beautifully. It should be a work of art. It should be something people will look at and go, ooh and ah. And I'd have to find some artist, maybe somebody will watch this video who will be part of it. I'm going to stop this year. We could go back if you wanted to the habitat on Mars. But see, that's the whole idea there, is to have a place you can live in, make a living out of, that you can live comfortably in, that you can get your nature bath in, unlike the houses that we live in today. Our stick-built houses are inadequate to meeting our psychological and sociological and ecological needs. This goes there. It meets your psychological, sociological, and ecological needs all together, and provides very little impact on the planet. Now, I'm seeing a Q&A flag here. Anonymous attendee says, I hope your vision, this planet, and for us to live in places beyond comes true. Amen. Hey, you know what? We can do that. You tell me if I need to type out answers to these, but I'm talking to them. Now we've got, let's see, the chat here. Raja from Huntsville to all panelists. David, you look different. Okay. Ron, the Ham Expo went really well. Bill Brown from Madison did a good program. Yep, with balloons around the world. Yeah, we all know Bill Brown. Happy 23 years. Well, you know, that 23 years is the time I've been president of HAL5. HAL5 is older than that now. It's double that age. We started in 1983. So, Raj, if you don't mind, the sound from the sim is interfering with Greg's audio. Oh, that's interesting. So, actually, let's see here. Will the materials it's made out of be able to withstand extreme temperatures of Mars, for example? Yeah, we've actually done, I've been part of efforts looking at in situ structures built on the moon, which has more extreme temperatures, and we were looking at lunar crete and things like that. Another person who's a fellow from the National Space Society has been looking at this for years and years, does Moon Miners Manifesto, and I got brain lock, I've known him forever, so I can't think of his name, maybe somebody will pop up with it. Moon Miners Manifesto, we actually consulted with his stuff when we were looking at, he's up in Wisconsin, even chaired a conference there. Yeah, I'm getting brain locked here, but I know I'm well. It'll come to me shortly. And somebody say, amen, brother, testify. It could be more or less like level 1. Okay. So let me go back in. We'll go back to Mars here if people like, because we were there to start with. Everybody didn't see it, right? So here we are in the Mars sim. This is a Martian rendition of this. And let's see. All right, so I can't seem to walk around. What's going on? There we go. Now I'm mobile again. All right. I'm supernatural. I'm walking through materials here. Sometimes materials in here change. This is the ground level, or actually it's all underground. This is the bottom level of this facility. It's got an aquaponics tank with a stage built over half of it. And you can see the stage is set up for entertainment. Yes, you can, and there's even a party ball up there, right? There's spiral staircases leading to the roof. We're growing on the walls, and we've got growing areas here on the floor. There's some veggies here that's not all fully populated. Again, here you can see the tomatoes. We got lettuce, cabbage, whatever here. And we got cushions because we had a big party in here. And let's see, I will try to play Superman here and fly. Good, I didn't bump my head. Hey, don't do that. I'll go up another level. Nope, did it that time. Ouch. So, yeah, my flying skills still lack a little bit here. Oops, I'm back. Yeah, there we go. And I'm landed, and there we are. So let me walk around here and get a little bit out of that. I'm still flying. Oops. Nailed it on the ground. It did. There we go. It's great to be Superman. And here we are inside. This is a 3-level system. You can see plants on the further wall. It's got water around the top edge here. That's to collect condensation off the roof. And so there's a lot of thought went into this. There's the mining operations outside. You can see the photovoltaic and reflective panels that are kind of integrated on the outside here. How many people do we have watching now, David? So this can be a beautiful concept. It can be a beautiful home. It can be a beautiful place where people can live, work, play, grow, recreate. And of course, you can go outside. You don't have to be in the home all the time. And you can have different transportation systems, just like we do today, but you won't need them as much, just like working from home right now. You don't have to spend as much time on money on gas and vehicle repairs and all that stuff. So it's got some advantages than maybe our working from home experience that we have today. This is kind of like a one-way portal. So there's 2 ways out of here. Go this way if I can get out of here. Nope, won't let me out. Some of these ports. Oh, if I can fly out. Oh, I did get out. Those that hadn't seen, you know, we've got once again, we got the mining equipment. I'm kind of going back through here just because some people hadn't seen all this. They can join us later. This is one of the mining operations. This is the process, the regolith. Yeah, the blue outside, that's just a limitation of the system itself. They got a sabotage, or how you say the process, like a lot of screens here. People walk in. So we had a big party here. Here is one of our got 2 landing pads here. This one's got one of the older concepts for a SpaceX Starship. I guess you could go in a cargo hull, but we won't do that. And again, I'll just go back inside the habitat. And I'm still flying, so I'm going to put that on the ground. There we go. I said, red hair and white beard, just like I'm in life. Just the hair's a little short. All right, so I'm going to stop that share. I'm going to get out of there. And it would be great to have Greg's comments on O'Neill type habitats. Beam me up soon too, sir. I love the O'Neill concept. Now, but it takes a lot of facilities to build that. In fact, I do think I am more inclined to want to see free orbital facilities. You could take platforms and build them with these type habitats. Essentially, if you take a couple of platforms and have cables between them and spin them, spin these platforms. You could have 2 platforms. Let's say like the size of the deck of that boat, or much smaller. If you want 2,400 people making the size of that deck. If you want them, I think you need R equals omega squares. The calculation for R omega square for the gravity centrifugal force that you want to approximate gravity with acceleration, so you can work it out. I did a habitat one time based on using shuttle external tanks, and I found that with the length of a shuttle's external tanks as the spokes of a habitat, I could get lunar gravity. You would want to make it bigger than that for Martian gravity. You don't need to get Earth gravity if you're going to Mars, but if you're going to live in it, go back and forth to Earth, you may want it to have Earth gravity. The more gravity you want in it, the bigger your habitat is going to be if you're trying to hold the rotational rate steady. Some people think that for that various reasons that we want to keep the rotational rate at 1 revolution per minute. But some people argue with that. If you want to do 2 RPM, you can definitely make it more compact. So the question is, how fast do you want to spin it? And we got to do a lot of research to find out what's really applicable there. Some of you may be aware that there was concepts for what we call the Martian Cycler. And the Martian Cycler was essentially 2 modules or 2 habitats, like I was talking, with cables between them spinning that would always circulate between Earth and Mars. And you could send a spaceship to it and get aboard and live on it till you got to Mars and depart. And it would go back and forth. And it would be kind of like an elevator or a shuttle. It would just go back and forth between Earth and Mars, and you hop on and hop off as you need it. And that's something you might do. You can put these in free space, and these could be the beginnings, the lower cost starts of your O'Neillian facility. So you could build some of these, and you could put these 6 feet of dirt regolith around it that you would need to live in free space. And yet with water overhead, you could use mirrors appropriately and bring in your sunlight. And with the sunlight coming in, you would be able to live in free space and start this up a lot cheaper than going into building the hat box concept or the Stanford tourist concept, which was the bicycle wheel, or the O'Neillian facilities. And you could grow toward that. In fact, you could grow these platforms and they could eventually evolve into something like that. But you need a beachhead. You need a starting place. And this would be a good way to get things started. And it might be that your first habitats might actually, instead of being sandbag built, you might use pieces of tanks out of a starship or a super heavy. You might use super heavy tanks. In fact, you might use super heavies as a spoke. Just don't send them back to Earth. Just keep them up there and use those tanks. And those tanks will give you a lot of operating space too to be enclosed, especially if they were the spokes in your system. So there's a lot of ways to get at this. The habitat I did it back in about '89. I had a habitat concept that we had a facility for 100 people that operated at lunar gravity, and we needed 9 basic external tanks to build it. And it was going to rotate like a paddle wheel. So when you walk down the main hallways of the habitat modules, the Coriolis force wouldn't affect you because it's a cross buck. If you're moving in the same direction of the spin, you don't have Coriolis force at all. So should proceed to use of shuttle tanks. We don't have a shuttle anymore, but there will be the tanks, the first stage of the space launch system. You might could use the core stage of the space launch system or something like that, or use the super heavy tanks that let's say I don't know how many uses that Elon thinks he's going to get out of each super heavy first stage. So he's going to have a starship is going to have a super heavy first stage, and then the starship sitting on top of it. It might be that toward the end of the life of your last mission of your super heavy, you just leave it on orbit. Maybe you buy it from Elon and buy it, pennies on the dollar because he's about to discard it. Probably cut it up for the scrap metal bin, right? And use that as a building pieces to build these things from, or at least build the spokes from it. Or you could use that as the circle for your habitat. Now, what I showed was based on the scale of a 1/10 of an acre. So, but that was for 4 people. You could scale them toward how many people. You could put several of these together. The more you've got together, the more redundancy you have in your system. So having multiple cells or cell packs would be a better way to go for the standpoint of redundancy if you take a hit and lose a little air somewhere or something, God forbid, something happens, right? So NASA is going to be super enthusiastic about using anything from SLS. Well, there you go. So, we can get the shuttle tank on orbit. You ought to be able to put a little sustainer engine on a first stage of an SLS and take it all the way up there. SpaceX is a different perspective, by the way. This is John Passard. Hi, John. Well, thank you for saying that, Rock. Peter Koch. Yes, thank you. That's what I was trying to say, Robin. I had brain lock. Peter Cope, Moon Miners Manifesto was edited and published by Peter Cope 10 times a year to 2012. Yeah, when we did our in situ studies, it was about 2010. And so we actually consulted with Peter Cope then. And Peter actually ran an ISDC, I think in maybe 98, the one that we had. I'm not sure, it may not be right on the year, but we had that one in Milwaukee, and he was the chair of that conference. He did a lot of work on all this stuff. And so even engineers turned to his work. One of our local chapter members said, I was involved in situ lunar resources study group back in, it's been over 10 years ago. And one of our other guys who used to be a member of HAL5, Mike Fisk, well, he actually was one of the leaders in that study. And he was on the contractor side working for Jacobs Engineering. He may be NASA now, I don't know. But he actually used to be a neighbor of mine. He was one of the first members of HAL5 too, by the way. He's not a member presently, I don't think. But Mike Fisk was very instrumental in that study. I don't remember all our NASA counterparts, but we did consult with Peter Cope's Moon Miners Manifesto, and I thought that was really cool. So Peter actually did he put a lot of work and effort in what he did, and he did a lot of good stuff. So let's see, Job Mac says, yeah, sure, just like the person used to show. Well, yeah, okay, well, yeah, I'm saying it could be done. I'm not saying it will be done, but there was a group that was actually involved in trying. They wrote a proposal to keep a shuttle external tank on orbit. What NASA required was you to be able to control it. So you had to have the money to show that you can maintain control on that external tank, which means you had to get attitude and you had to be able to keep it at the altitude. Or if you did re-enter, it had to be done so in a controlled manner, even if that stuff was coming down anywhere. Don't forget James Hawkins. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So is James in the room here? So, Jabal Mac. Okay, that is John Bossard. Okay, all right, very good. So, yeah, there's a lot of things we could do. All right, there's another Q&A that's got some things. I'm going to click on that and see what's in that area. Oh, we got Timothy Weaver says, what about keeping the water from freezing on the 2-week lunar night? How do you leave room for water to freeze at the heating field? Well, you could have the jars open on top. You know, they could be open in the top side so the water could expand upward if they're built strong enough. Hopefully you'd have enough thermal mass that the inside of your habitat would not go below the temperature. And maybe you would have on the moon where there's such a crazy temperature differential for so long. It might be better if you had it totally recessed and had some kind of clamshell you can close over it, or a roof you'd pull over it if it was flat and recessed, kind of like the lid over a missile silo that gets pushed back, you know, before you launch a missile, that big concrete lid. Maybe you could have something that would help provide some insulative capacity there other than just the glass, because glass is very radiated. You might even have 2 levels of glass and be able to blow foam pellets in them during that period, or have other blankets or ways to keep things warmer inside during the long lunar night. You would really want that because that's part of your habitat. So that's where you're growing your vegetables. You don't want them to freeze. Unless you're growing lettuce. Lettuce can withstand, and there are things that can withstand freezing temperatures as long as they don't get too cold. But you couldn't get anywhere near the temperatures of the lunar night, which is about 250 below zero, or the Martian night even. So that most of the habitat greenhouses you see depicted on Mars would fail immediately. They absolutely would not work at all. You need something with a lot of thermal mass. At least a Wallapini style greenhouse would be better than most of what I've seen depicted for Martian habitats. So in fact, you could build habitats like this as just greenhouses. You could build trenches, Wallapini style, and have algae tanks in them, and use that algae as your oxygen. Take your air from your habitat and circulate it up through that tanks of the water, blow it through, and so that the algae would scrub a lot of your CO2 and help produce oxygen. The algae then you could turn around as to use it for biomass for your garden area, or you might eat it directly. Or you could squeeze it and get the oils out of it and use the oil to lubricate your machinery with. Maybe even you might even have a few diesel machines if you get air to run them. But anyway, let's see what else we got here in the comments. Anonymous attendee said, did you see this possibility as a suitable location to homelessness, especially in bigger cities. Yes, absolutely. In fact, there's a guy who ran for Congress up in Washington State. I plan to interview him on my YouTube channel soon. He's actually working to develop a system like that, and I've got a friend also in Florence that is working to build homes for homeless people. So I think this would be an excellent solution to that. Look, I think we can go into the poorest countries on earth where people are living in tin shacks and give them nice homes where they can live in comfort, where it's, you know, a good, comfortable shirt sleeve atmosphere year round, and they can live in prosperity instead of poverty. I think this could be a way to really turn our whole society, the whole world around. Rodman says the discussions on Genie quickly grew, and several new discussion subcategories were created and organized by Greg and Nick Graben, and later became the outline used by the still online Artemis data book. Around this time, Dana Carson became involved and donated space on his personal web server, becoming the first webmaster for the Artemis project. Okay, when you're talking Artemis, you're talking about Greg, what's his last name? He hired me once upon a time. I can't remember his last name. There was another Greg. He was very instrumental in Artemis way back. He actually hired me to work for Bigelow Aerospace, but it delayed my start date. I called him and said I wasn't coming. All right, so let's see. And John Bosser says cabbage and potatoes, and ask any Russian. Well, yeah, cabbage and potatoes can definitely handle the variations, and they do grow well in Russia, right? And I've been to Moscow. I enjoyed my trip there, by the way. I very much enjoyed Moscow. Let's see. I don't see any other questions down here. Let's see if I can scroll. David, is there something on Facebook? Is there a Facebook site? Should I go to Facebook and look for questions, or would you want to relay questions to me?
I tried streaming it to Facebook, but it didn't seem to be, I must be doing something wrong. It didn't seem to be successful when I was testing it.
Okay, so it's not on Facebook. We have 16 participants right now.
Yeah, I tried streaming to Facebook. It wouldn't, it was giving me some kind of malfunction. I think maybe it's because if you're the host, I can't stream a Facebook. When I transfer capabilities to you, I'm not sure what's going on.
Oh, well, I don't know. That's interesting. Well, people will be able to go see this later. You'll post it, right? And then I can post
well, we're going to try. It says it's recording, so we should be able to post it to YouTube. I did have a question. I think I posted it in there before in the chat box.
Yeah, what's your question, David?
Oh, the question I had, have you seen cities adopt some of these design principles? Because I think like over in Milan, Italy, they're designing skyscrapers that actually have yards or farms growing on them.
Right. That's
and
good.
The whole goal, and in Mexico City, I think on their free, it's like what, 20 million people, some crazy number out there inside of Mexico City. Pollution's been historically, it's a lot like Los Angeles. They have a lot of pollution there. And I think they were like growing like vines or some kind of CO2 absorbing plants on the freeway, on all the freeway pillars, with the goal of soaking up all the waste products.
That helps. That helps.
The goal was to soak up all the CO2 from all the cars.
You know, plants actually scrub a lot of contaminants out of the air when they breathe in the air. So plants are very good to have in your home. To have a home that's growing plants inside is like super. So you don't want to get just the psychological boost I was talking about, but you're able to grow your own food, help recycle your air. Although those plants alone won't be enough to scrub all your CO2 and make all your oxygen. That's why you may want to augment it with algae tanks or something else, which is entirely doable, like those tunnels I showed there. You know, so we could go take it to another level, or you could build habitats or just solely farm habitats. But there is a lot that can be done, and I'm glad to see cities starting to green a little bit. But the cool thing about this concept, one of the key things about this concept on Earth is, and it will work on Mars, because on Mars, you don't have to invest all the money to build the kind of infrastructure to replicate things like we have on Earth. But you won't need to if the homes are more independent, more self-contained. So you have less distributed systems. One of the most expensive elements of the space station, we ran distributed systems through all the elements on it. And so the most expensive thing on the International Space Station wasn't the launch cost, it wasn't the materials we sent up, it was the interface control documents to control all the distributed systems and to integrate between all the different players. That was a massive effort to do that. So if you can get away from that in your space systems, make things more element centric, you will be way ahead in terms of your cost to develop and deploy the systems. So you don't need as much stuff, and expense, the coordination, the engineering goes way down. Be more and more element centric. I think that's a good way to go. And Ron Howard says, do you believe terraforming Mars is feasible since your simulation showed a SpaceX rocket and Musk has already put one in space? Well, he hasn't put the Starship in space yet. Do you anticipate that all future Martians will drive Teslas? Well, well, all right, there are several questions there. I love it. That's a good one, Ron. I love that. First, I believe that terraforming Mars is feasible. That's the idea of terraforming Mars and making the Earth like on the outside. Yeah, it would be feasible over time. How much time is a good question. You know, of course, Mars, Elon advocated nuking the poles. You know, I think that's a bit dramatic. Problem is, if also you could slam asteroids into the planet and bring water, and comets and bring water and heat things up, maybe and cause some effects you want. But that's also going to cause big Mars quakes, which will be rough to your initial habitats, your first cities. Yeah, you could over time come up with some way to develop an atmosphere on Mars and make it more and more Earth-like. But you know, how are you going to maintain it over the long term? The reason that Mars don't have one today is it don't have a magnetosphere, and eventually the sun strips all that away. So if you don't find some way to augment it, which you might be able to do with as we become a type 2 civilization, type 1 civilization, in which we're not even type 1 yet. If you're a type 1 civilization on the planet Mars, you might be able to control that. But right now, the way we're talking about it, you might also lose it all. It might all blow away and wind up back like it is. Then you've wasted a lot of material trying to develop that. I believe you could have really nice habitats built like I shown, distributed everywhere, and live with them quite comfortably and not need all that. But that's not to say you wouldn't have it. You wouldn't do it. The people there would probably desire it. So it will happen over time, most likely. And if you can build it initially, you might be able to maintain it. But if you're, say, getting all the what's left of Martian water and frozen atmosphere and gas back in the atmosphere, you run the risk that if Mars loses that, the next cycle, Mars is going to be a much, much, much poorer planet. So, you know, we need to ask a lot of big questions. Is it really worth it in the long term? And I think that means you've got to find some way of sustaining it over the long term. Sans the magnetic field that Mars don't have. Maybe you can find a way to regenerate a magnetic field and make it work. Now, will all future Martians drive Teslas? Well, I don't know about all future Martians, but a lot of them might initially, because the Tesla is an electric vehicle. It doesn't require oxygen, which is a little bit lacking on Mars to run. So they may not look like the Teslas we see, but it might look closer to his truck. So I would expect that it's interesting that Elon is developing battery technology, solar technology. He's developing satellites. He's developing his boring company for making tunnels. He's actually got companies and technologies being developed that would give you the infrastructure and systems you need on Mars. It's interesting. A lot of these companies he's developing on Earth, he could be considered bits and pieces and parts of what you're going to need there on Mars. You're going to need a satellite network on Mars to communicate on Mars. So he is building the infrastructure, the bits and pieces, everything he's going to need that he could take forward and go to Mars with. Now you would implement it a little differently, just like the habitat I showed you on Earth. I've shown you the habitat on Mars too. There are some differences between them, but the core construction philosophies are the same. You can scale it up. You can scale it down. For one person, you can make it 1,083 square foot surface area. That is much smaller than my home that I'm living in now. But you can do it and grow your food. But then again, I could just about grow all the food. The more food than I could stand to eat on. A few racks full of microgreens. I could set a few pots to grow seeds. Of course, I probably wouldn't want to eat microgreens alone. I could go to a rabbit cage. I do grow rabbits, some mushrooms. I could put in a little warm fire. I could do all that in a space like this house. I mean, seriously, what we can do is far greater than what we've been led to think. You don't need big combines, big tractors. You don't need big diesel fuel, big ag. You don't need all the systems that we use to run our society today. Our society is running on far too many resources, it's far too complex, it's far too fragile. With a big catastrophe that can take us all out, the fragility is way too high. We could get the fragility down. We can make our society more robust. A society with people living in habitats like this isn't going to require all the power systems we have today. You're not going to need the nuclear power plants. You're not going to need anything much more than what you got in your home. You'll still have some factories. You'll still have a few things that's going to need some power, but you can build out of this. You won't need all the office space. You won't need as much manufacturing space. You can order stuff directly. You'll have warehouses, but you won't have but if you do more distributed manufacturing, more 3D print, you're going to need less and less and less and less of all of that. I can see a society that's radically different than anything we have today. And that's really what you want on Mars. You can't afford all that infrastructure, for Pete's sake. So this thinking could really help us here on Earth and can help us on Mars. You could even, if you're not a gardener per se, there's technology now to basically grow gardens with 3D robotics. Just like 3D printers scaled up and use the right software. You have various software modules to help you garden if you so chose to use those. So there's a lot of options out there. So just imagine a world where everything you're growing is organic. You're not using pesticides or fertilizers. You're not going to want that inside your habitat. But I don't use any pesticides or fertilizers or chemicals of any sort on my farm. I grow food and vegetables. I've got aquaponics systems. I've got raised bed gardens. I have a worm farm. All that is the basic technology. It's like Elon. He's got his Bourne company. He's got his SpaceX. He's got Tesla. He's got his Tesla batteries, solar cells, and all these elements as satellites. Well, I'm kind of doing the same thing for the habitat. I've got the worm farm, the aquaponics. I've got the raised bed gardening. My problem is I got a day job too, so it's kind of hard to see after all that and do 2 YouTube channels. So I think there's a lot of exciting possibilities for the future. I would like to see if some people would like to join with me on a project to build this prototype habitat. I'm really thinking to start that real soon. I'm gonna have to quit my day job to do it though, so I may start a GoFundMe. Maybe we could set that up as a project through HAL5, because it would be a prototype space facility and a prototype Earth facility. Maybe we could build a couple different versions, maybe 3: Earth, Moon, and Mars. Maybe even a free space concept. Because I definitely think free space is how we want to do it. Okay, there's been other stuff. Let me scroll down. Timothy Weaver says, I heard that plants only use a fraction % of light. Yeah, that's true. Sunlight from photosynthesis, only a narrow band of light. They use mostly blue and red. If that's so, then would we be off collecting light with solar panels and providing light to plants with especially designed LEDs that produce light only in wavelength these? You could do that. And you could grow plants in the lower levels. I showed you these habitats where the temperature would be more stable, and you could use lights there too, because you got plenty of growing space if you go multi-level with this thing. And Timothy Weaver also said, or just drop a lot of black soot on the surface of Mars polar caps. Okay, that might do it. Certainly that sounds better than nuking it, right? Ron Howard says, it seems that your self-sufficient habitat could be readily used by survivalists in Idaho, provided, of course, that you could design, that your design could be modified to add a gun cabinet. Oh yes, it would accommodate a gun cabinet in Idaho quite well. What about terraforming Venus? Oh yeah, Venus. Where the atmosphere is 1 atmosphere in pressure, the temperatures are pretty Earth-like. You could actually have inflatable habitats like Buckminster Fuller's tensegrity sphere concept, which was a sphere about 1 mile across, built on this tensegrity technology. Or you can make it inflatable and have a little bit of overpressure in size, and have so you have buoyancy. You make something really big, you could put land inside of it, and it would float in the atmosphere of Venus. The only problem is Venus has a lot of acid in the atmosphere, so your craft going in and out and between these things would have to be able to handle, and whatever you built it, have to be able to handle the acids in the Venetian atmosphere. But where the atmosphere is 1 atmospheric pressure, the temperatures are rather balmy. It's not the searing 900 degrees lead river molten lead and crushing pressures that you have below. So maybe you could figure out some way to dip down and mine lower levels of the atmosphere for some of the materials you need. And maybe if you really come up with robust technology, you could get things that could go to the surface from time to time and grab some things from there. Yeah, I don't know. That would be a tough thing because the pressures and temperatures are so extreme on the surface of Venus. But yeah, we could settle Venus, but eventually on Venus, you might want to put up some sun shades. Maybe if you put enough sun shades up, the atmosphere would cool down and condense on the surface. Then what would Venus be like? See, that'd be interesting to find out. Of course, eventually the sun, as it gets older, it's believed it will burn harder and hotter. And as it does, our comfort Goldilocks zone that we live in now might move outward away from Earth. Earth might become uninhabitable, in like a billion years from now, they believe. Maybe 500 million years. We may only have 500 million years left of habitability on Earth, unless we put up sunscreens to block the sun or find ways to move Earth to a higher orbit. People do talk about those kind of things. There's a guy who's got a channel. His name is Arthur Isaacson. And he's got a great channel on YouTube. He talks about these things at no end. He's quite an interesting guy. I hope y'all check him out. I've got 2 YouTube channels too. I'll show you in a minute some of that. Let's see. Ron says, it seems that your survivalist habitat could be readily used. Okay, I've already read that one. All right, so that was the last comment I read there. Let's see what's on the Zoom side here. Again, did no one see the movie Elysium? The poor will be regulated to stand on Earth. The more prosperous folks will leave the planet. Well, that may be, but it don't have to be that way. And Earth may not be so bad if you had everybody living in habitats like this, right? So this whole idea that we have to have society bifurcated between some elite superhuman transhumanist race and some poor worker bees is that may be what some people want us to see, because maybe some people want that for the future, but that's a horrible notion for a future, and it's not necessary. You don't need a future like that. We can have a future where people can be humans and live prosperous. Everybody can live prosperous and have a zilch impact on the environment. Less impact than we're having right now. Even less impact than the guys in the poor countries have. We could have a beautiful world and live prosperous on Earth, in free space, on the moon, if you can live on the moon at 1/6. We don't even know really if you can live, what's going to be like, what's going to be the long-term prospects of living in 1/3 gravity. We don't know that. We may actually need free space. We may need to build O'Neillian type spheres, but to get there, we could walk to it through having platforms with habitats like I depict that are strung together with cables or core stage tanks of SLS vehicles or super heavy first stages that are near the end of their life as spokes between the tanks and spin them as spokes between the platforms. And on those platforms, you can populate them with habitats like I've shown here. And you can make them small, or if you did them, 1,200 by 1,200 square, you could have, roughly, 2,400 people or something like that living in a space habitat of that type. Which you're going to have a lot of spokes and cables in there to hold it all together, right? But that's bridge building technology. That's what O'Neill figured out back in the 1970s. You could build the habitats he was depicting with bridge building technology that was available back then in terms of the strengths and materials. Now, how you get it all started and built, you're not just going to build an O'Neill cylinder day one, but but using inflatables and vapor deposition of metals on the inflatables, you could build shells in time and build these large space manufacturing facilities, these large space habitats. You could have O'Neillian colonies in the not too distant future in free space. And for me, I think that's the most beautiful concept for how to live. But I think everybody's seen those. So that's why I didn't put those in my presentation. We are supposed to be a space colony society. If y'all want me to do a presentation in the future showing O'Neillian colonies, I could do that. And there's a lot of artwork out there, and it's a very beautiful concept. Elysium did show a habitat like that. If you saw the presentation that Jeff Bezos put out when he did his presentation on his lunar lander, he had some very artistic looking O'Neillian type colonies depicted. He had some people do a lot of artwork on that. I would like to find somebody who could help me with the artwork that I'm talking about. All right, so we've been going now for an hour, a little over an hour. I've been answering the questions. Is there anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with all the COVID-19 going on and probably many people losing their jobs, worried about being losing their homes or not being able to pay rent or their mortgage, and probably people wanting a sort of social distance to a new level, do you think that these sort of like lower costs, like for example, mini homes, I mean, it's not what you're talking about exactly, but basically using minimalist resources to get some kind of a basic shelter, right? So that we're not, do you think that these sort of shelters that we're talking about here in this talk, do you think they're going to be, do you think there'll be a movement after COVID-19 for more people to get these kind of shelters, just for, if for no other reason, because they realize how fragile society really is?
Yeah, there should be and there could be. What we need to do is get this idea out to the world to show them what the possibilities are. You can build these with sandbags. They make these earth bags basically that are like sandbags, but they're long cubes. And you can build them. You can build these circles up, and you can build everything inside. You can frame with them. You can do all kind of stuff, and they're not expensive. So this is a low-cost way. Now, they might, for pounding the dirt, it might have some labor-intensive side. But if you're unemployed, you're homeless, you got labor available. People used to get together and would raise a barn and a house in a couple of days. You know, a day for a house, a day for the barn. You know, a lot of communities do that today. You know, you're like not your Mennonites, but your what do you call them? I'm getting brain lock like that. Mennonites.
Amish.
Amish, yes, the Amish do that.
Yeah, did you barn raising?
Yeah, our ancestors did that. My ancestors did that. Back in the old days, that's how they built houses. That's how they built barns. Everybody in the community just pitched in and they'd put it up. You'd have like 20, 30, 40 people working on it. It'd be up in a day. You know, it wouldn't take no time. So if you do that kind of thing, you could build these things. You can build them quickly and people could have homes. You just have to have some land that people find some way to finance collectively or together to do that. But you could make a business proposition out because, like I said, you can grow your food and you can sell food from it if you do it properly. And if you don't know how to do that, maybe we could use 3D robotics to facilitate and help some people in that regard down the road. The other thing is that, you know, I'm talking about having space underneath, even to grow inside, or have like your internal 3D printers, your lathes, whatever you want, server farms, whatever kind of business you want to have within the home itself. You literally could work out of your home and do just about everything you needed to do. And each home is basically its own little environment. You could totally enclose them and seal it off. You could hermetically seal it. So if you had some really bad diseases running around, like an airborne Ebola, you could, which is possible. You know, there was the Ebola Reston, which was an airborne Ebola that was discovered in a facility in Reston, Virginia. And it just so happens airborne Ebola, there was monkeys in 2 different rooms, far separated in this building, and it traveled through the air system. That's why they called it Ebola Reston. You can look it up. It just so happens that building became later available for a cheap price, and guess who leased that building? It was the headquarters of the company I worked for when I had this cup made, Grumman. Space Station Integration Contract. Some of you may know Gary Barnhart. He actually worked in that building. You know, he's been quite involved in NSS at the national level. So that is part of what's possible. We may have to worry about things like that in the future. So maybe you could look at what we're dealing with now as an opportunity to teach us how to live should things get worse in future pandemics. This one has, you know, this is not catastrophic. It's bad, but it's not a catastrophic pandemic. You literally, there are diseases out there that could be literally catastrophic. Like I said, if you had an airborne Ebola, you would be in serious trouble. People, you know, there were bird flu versions that were 50% fatal to people when they caught it, but it wasn't transmissible human to human. Well, some knuckleheads in laboratories in the Netherlands and in Indonesia, the paradigm of having biocontainment, right? they developed human transmissible bird flu. That's insane. Why would anybody on Earth do something like that? If you need to really think you need to do research like that, that's a good reason to have a space facility that's far isolated. So that stuff is not coming back here.
Well, Greg,
that should never be done in our biosphere. There's some stuff that should never be developed here. How did we get this thing spread around in the first place? Some people think it came out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So did it? That's a good question. They were certainly researching things of the same type of what's going around now. So I know people that have looked at the genome and said and they say it's artificial.
Hey, Greg. Well, did you ever see that movie 12 Monkeys? It came out like in '97 with Bruce Willis. That was a major plot point. Is this crazy guy wants to reset the entire population back to zero because he thinks that people are like this virus. So he goes in a biotech lab and releases this virus that wipes out most of civilization, where maybe 1% survive it. And so yeah, so obviously it was a COVID-19 stuff like that's a major. I mean, will that really happen? Who's to say? But it wouldn't take much.
It could happen. It could happen. You know, look, the thing is that biological facilities are popping up all over the world. I did a video some time back where I called it a nuke in every pot, because I realized when we were doing our HALO high altitude rockets in 2 garages in Huntsville, Alabama, we were hitting space on a shoestring budget from 2 garages. We were, with a small team on a shoestring budget, accomplishing what just a few decades earlier took a superpower to. On the United States and Russia could do what we were doing out of a garage on a shoestring budget. And that really put me into a thought experiment right then. I go, oh my God, the proliferation of technology can't be stopped. Eventually, people are going to have the equivalents of weapons of mass destruction capability that can be obtained by small groups, maybe even individuals. And indeed, it wasn't long after I thought of that somebody ordered a genome off the internet and then ordered the constituent parts and built a virus from things ordered off the internet. So and that was like around the year 2000, a little bit after, maybe 2010. The capability, I think it was 2007 or something like that. Well, with the kind of capabilities that we have today with CRISPR and all this, there are biolabs in almost every country. I mean, even the poor countries have biolabs. That gets scary. Let me show you. I'm going to share Google Earth. I'm going to share with you guys my YouTube channels, if you don't mind. I've got 2 of them. I'm going to show them to you. And I'll blow this up. If you go in, this is my YouTube channel, Green Gregs. This channel is mostly about prepping, it's about gardening, it's about worm farming. I got a video here, top 5 risks to end 2020. And I talked about crop risk, food risk. I talked about the risk of war. I talked about how to worm farm. Those are some of my playlists. All of the videos, I got more videos than will go in the playlist. Grid down EMP, growing microgreens in your living room, aquaponics, gardening. There's my dad. There's just some fun stuff. But if you want to see all the videos, the best way to find them on any channel is just click videos, and you can sort through every one on the channel. I will find 2 videos I want people to see. I'm not going to play them here, of course. But what you do is you have to come in here and just keep scrolling. Sometimes you reach a button and you just got to hit more, and sometimes it will just keep scrolling on its own. And it just seems to be like a roll of the dice as to which way it goes. I'm asking a lot of sociological questions here. Talk about freedom matters, morality matters. I cover a lot of stuff in here. This is the guy here, Dr. Paul Cottrell, who has looked at the gene sequence on the virus. So I do cover a lot of territory. It's a pretty broad range. I don't get woke up on my titles here. That's just for fun, because I like alliteration, and everybody tells me I look like Odin or Woden with my long hair and beard, or Gandalf. So I just went with a little. I like a little, I do poetry a lot, and some of my videos actually read poetry. But if we go back far enough, we're going to find a couple of really good videos I want everybody to see. Here's one how government is run, and that's me actually walking in through the halls of Congress. Somebody might recognize another character. Here's two videos on the family that's growing food on 1/10 of an acre in their backyard. I've been in their house. That was my second trip there. I divided this into 2 videos. We're in Pasadena, California. And I got a worm farm in Arizona also, by the way. It's just a starter. Hang on, let's go back a little further. This is about the human hive, I'm afraid we're all going to wind up in. That I will like to see us avoid insect apocalypse. There's something about this habitat. Here we are. A nuke in every pot. You ever see the movie, The Forbidden Planet? In the movie, The Forbidden Planet, they go to this planet that's totally desolate. But what they find underground is like Mars. But underground, there's the remnants of a vast, powerful civilization. What they had done is they come up with machines that could deliver any amount of energy so that with their mind, they could create anything they wanted. And once they had that technology, and within one night, the civilization wiped itself out because of the monsters that it hid. And they went to sleep. Their subconscious minds generated monsters, and they wiped each other out. Well, the problem is it doesn't take technology to that level to do that job. We can do that a whole lot sooner. And this video talks about that, a nuke in every pot. And I got another video here somewhere close to this one called The Fragility of Civilization. See it right before, right after that, real close to it. And on that video, I talk about the story as rendered in first person by a number 2 pencil in the 1950s, talking about why it took casts of tens of thousands to actually build a number 2 pencil. There it is. I got a number 2 pencil in my hand. See why society is more fragile than you can imagine. If there's 2 videos I'd like for people in this presentation to see, that would be them. Why is society more fragile than you can imagine, and a nuke in every pot? I think that's going to tell you a lot of what you need to think about, why we need a much more resilient civilization. And with a habitat concept like I'm talking, we would absolutely get a far more resilient civilization. And let's see, I'll take you to another YouTube channel here. That's my other YouTube channel. Now, there's 2 YouTube channels with the name Galactic Gregs. The other guy's got an apostrophe here, and it's a comic book channel. I'm not into comic books, but you can see here that I do videos on quite a few things here. One of my most popular videos is this one on the mighty F1 rocket engine. Actually, the most popular video I've got posted right now is where I talked about a Earth-like planet around a sun-like star. This channel doesn't have near the views or the subscriptions of my other channel, so I'm still trying to grow it. So everybody here, please check this out, Galactic Gregs. It does include a few of the HAL5 presentations that I recorded in the past too. And again, to see all the videos there, just click videos. There's far less on this channel. John Bossard might recognize this presentation here. Yeah, who's this guy? So here I did one where Elon's claiming he could get $9 a pound to orbit at his cost with his Starship concept. Well, if he can do that, that'd be radical. He doesn't even have to get nearly that to get radical. Here I'm explaining why you can prove the Earth is not flat just by looking at a solar eclipse, even from another country. And there's some fun stuff. I did take a couple of videos. My most popular videos, I actually took them off because the person that interviewed was getting so many calls. They asked me to do that. So they were happy at first, but the calls just kept coming. So yeah, it's one of the disadvantages. Now, see me, I get, in any instant, I got 5 or 6 people trying to text or message me. And I get about 40 or 50 hours worth of YouTube videos sent to me every day. So I can't really respond to everything that's coming to me. Again, this is back to Galactic Green Gregs. A lot of videos about a lot of topics there. I'm showing growing microgreens. I hadn't done an aquaponics video in a while, but I do have an aquaponics greenhouse and quite a few things. And I show things about how to make medicinals from wild plants. I do a lot of videos on foraging and eating from the wilds and wild medicinals. I got one here about the Beirut blast and how that's going to affect food security. And also this drench code that hit Iowa. So I cover a wide range of topics here in my channel. Planting rattlesnake beans. I do gardening videos, wild edibles. But these are all building blocks toward the habitat concept I've got. And you will, again, See a video down here, but there's probably a couple, three on the habitat itself. Sometimes I just have fun. Green Greg's Green Frog Band. I got a lot of frogs out here in my place, and you play them enough. This guy here, this Curtis Stone, his hallmark was he learned how to make $100,000 a year off of a quarter of an acre in British Columbia by farming it out of lawns of his own and his neighbors, and just little garden plots, like 6 separate little garden plots in different people's lawns, written his neighbors' lawns. You realize we have enough lawns in North America. We've got 42 to 40 million acres of lawns. You can feed 2 billion people from our lawns alone if we grew food instead of grass. So let me stop this share and see if there's any other questions here that I missed. Looks like there's some more in the Q&A. Let me come down here and see what's in here. Tim Weaver said 12 Monkeys was an awesome movie. Thumbs up. And Tim Weaver said Alicia movie was a load of garbage. Well, you got to remember, yeah, it was open. It wouldn't work that way, but you know, hey, it's Hollywood. What do you expect from Hollywood? I know Neil Collin would be built and supported by a space infrastructure because of prohibitive cost of launch material from Earth. Also, such an impression of wealth and would corrupt the third world tyranny. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, hey, it's Hollywood, Tim. A habitat like Alicia would be far more likely to be built by society with strong middle class. Yeah. Well, a lot of elites don't even want to see that. They would like to go back to the feudal world. And I think it behooves us to stop that. Ron Howard says, it seems like you're, okay, yeah, I already read that one. Let's see what I'm missing over here in the chat session. Note we should wrap up soon. It's 8:30. Okay, 8:30. All right, I don't think I see any comments that's not been addressed. I believe I've addressed all the comments and questions. Am I missing anything, David?
I don't think so. I mean, I was monitoring all the questions in the chat box. So, yeah, I think you've answered everything. Yeah.
All right, I took everyone to
open-ended discussion.
We've been to Mars. We went to Mars twice in this presentation. We have definitely. I've shown you my PowerPoint. I've shown you what was possible with the habitats. We've had a wide open discussion. You see my 2 YouTube channels. So everyone's welcome to go there and watch my YouTube videos from the 2 channels. Please subscribe to those channels if you would. Do you have any other questions? Anything else you'd like to see?
No, on my end. I mean, it's about 8:37 now, so yeah.
Are we going to IHOP?
Anyone's welcome to go there, but I haven't left the house in 5 months or whatever it is, so
yeah,
I will not be there.
I'm being facetious. I don't think I'm going to IHOP either. We probably need to maintain our social distancing, but you know, if there's somebody here that's not been to our normal meetings, that's what we used to always do, is run to IHOP and have a little social afterwards.
We'll resume it at some point when the COVID numbers go down. We'll be back in business.
I hope so. Be good to see everybody again. I miss everybody.
Yep.
And Ron said, thanks, Greg. Well, thank you, Ron, and everybody to ask questions. And John says, presentation. He's got an exclamation mark. I guess that means he liked it. So I hope everybody likes what we've seen here. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I wish we had more attendees, but you know, it is what it is. So let's see, jobs. I do indeed. Well done job, Greg. Great. Okay. All right. So I don't see any complaints. All right. I have nothing more to add unless somebody's got another question.
No, I can't think of any myself.
All right. Well, all right. I guess that's it.
Okay. Well, so I guess we can just wrap up tonight's talk since it's about 8:38. Now's a good time to end it at this time. Also keep in mind, we'll be having our September talk on September 15th. That is a panel discussion and with the Society of Technical Communication, and so there'll be a more data come out about that pretty soon. We'll be sending out a flyer and posting about that. It's about 1 month from now, so we'll definitely be sharing that with some membership. And also inside October, we're setting up some talks for later inside the year too. So we'll be sharing that. We have a speaker for October and December, so we'll be sharing that information too very soon. So more stuff is coming along, and yeah, and definitely when the COVID-19 numbers go down, we'll definitely be putting a lot more HAL5 activities that and be talking more about that, and probably thinking about next year in 2020, next year inside 2021. If it's safe to meet up in person, we'll definitely be discussing how to expand HAL5 since we've been sort of in hibernation mode for the past few months.
Well, I'll be looking for volunteers soon. One, I'd like somebody to help me out with the artwork for this habitat. But two,
Right.
If people want to help me build, I got a spot to start building one right now.
Yeah, that's maybe something we could do for kind of like the Halo type project.
Yeah, we can build a prototype right here. We can have our own little Mars colony. So I'm looking for help. Anybody want to volunteer for that? And also another thing, David, in the future, with all your videos, because you got people will be watching it on YouTube in the future. If anybody's watching this on the HAL5 channel, subscribe to the channel and go to the bell and bang the bell, the notification bell, and click all so you get all future notifications for future videos for the HAL5 channel. And do the same if you're watching this and other videos on my channels also.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll definitely. We have a YouTube channel, so I'll be. We definitely need to figure out how to grow the HAL5 YouTube channel. Just to. Is that something we haven't been doing?
Plug for it like I just did right there. That's what you do. What I just said, you say that early in the video while you still have people watching, not at the end like I just did.
Okay. Yeah.
Within the first few minutes, just before, maybe even just before the speaker starts talking.
Yeah, maybe what we'll do is we'll advertise a YouTube channel just to because this is, I think, our third webinar today. So this is our third webinar period that we've had.
I'll give you tips. I'll give you tips on that. I'll give you tips on that. I got a channel that's got 47,800 subscribers, so I can give you tips on how to grow your channel.
Oh yeah, that's definitely well, and I really want to keep it as a way to store all our videos so people can find a written record of it or visual record of it. Well, once if we lose these videos, we didn't lose them.
Oh, we lost tons of presentations in year past because they weren't recorded, or maybe individual members recorded them and didn't keep up with it. We've lost so much video, it's not funny. Now we do have, I did put a lot of stuff on Galactic Greg's, so we do have some of those presentations that I recorded stored there.
And maybe we can cross-link.
Yeah, but it's important. It's important every time you do a video to plug your channel. I mean, you got a little overhead stuff you should say in the front, but that's what all the big channels do. That's what you think. There's just certain things you say to get people to stay.
Right.
All right. Hey, I want to thank everybody for being here. We still got 12 participants. Thank you, guys.
All right. Yeah. Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and we'll be in touch again soon.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Thank you. Cheers, Greg. Thank you for the talk.
All right. Thank you.
I'll be eating the talk now.
Bye.